Oi, hello. Back again, but this time different location. This is the town hall in Oxford for the Breakthrough Discuss 2025 conference, talking about life as we don't yet know it. Before the conference started, we had a reception at the Ashmolean Museum with members of the Science Organizing Committee and all the speakers. Getting the conference started, here's day one where we were talking about the nature of consciousness and how life could be on other planets.
Using very specific outputs. So catalysis is important, not for speed, but for specificity of reaction. And that implies all the chemistry, including making a catalyst. And so in order to avoid an infinite regress, you must end up with polymeric catalyst. And that means you must end up with a dense, mobile solvent.
I spoke to Professor Sarah Ziegler, who is the leader of the entire initiative, and nothing that I showed you here today wouldn't be possible without her. So special thanks to her, but also to Max Ziegler, William Baines, John Grimes.
Processes within the cell and how those cells form multicellular organisms from a physics perspective. And that's not surprising. That's because, of course, we have all life as we know it today on Earth has evolved from some common ancestor, which was some sort of...
To conclude the first day of Breakthrough Discuss 2025, Sir Roger Penrose discussed quantum reality and how consciousness may be an artifact of quantum reality.
Axioms, and then you have a certain set of rules of procedure. So you have these axioms, and then you can combine them together in various ways. And if you can get the result out that you're trying to show, such as, for example, well, a simple example would be if you add two even numbers, you get another even number. This measurement gives you yes with certainty, and without disturbing the system, then it gives you a reality. What I'm trying to say now is that it does give you a reality, but it's a kind of reality which is a little peculiar. It's what I'm calling quantum reality. And I make the point that there are different kinds of reality. There's classical reality, and there is quantum reality, and they're not quite the same. The main difference is that classical reality, you can ascertain. So I can take my sticks here, and I say, hello stick, what's your shape? Well, it will say I'm more or less cylindrical up to here, I'm another slightly smaller cylinder, and I've got a little spike in the end, all that sort of stuff. And it can describe the shape exactly. Well, close enough. So that's what classical reality is like. You can say, hello state, what is your state like? And it can give you this description. Quantum reality is not like that. And I'll give you a good example. The spin of an electron, that's an example of a spin half particle. The spin of an electron, the state of that can be described by taking some direction, say the direction of my thumb, and it is spinning right-handed about that direction. Every state of spin is spinning right-handed about some direction. Now that is quantum reality. If I find a state, and I want to say, hello state, which way are you spinning? It looks at me blankly, and it says, I don't answer questions like that. Suggest a direction. So I might say, I know because I know the state came about from some complicated experiment, and it would be spinning about that direction, and I can confirm by saying, are you by any chance spinning about right-handed about that direction? And the spin then says, yep, you got it right. Every time you got it right. And that is quantum reality. But if I say, tell me which direction you're spinning in, it says, no, I don't answer that kind of question. That's the difference. So it's true about Einstein's idea of reality, but it's quantum reality. And this kind of reality is important to understand because it behaves very peculiarly with regard to time.
Good morning. Day two of the conference. We're here in the Randolph Hotel. It's pretty luxurious, pretty nice. I'm enjoying the stay here. Thank you, Breakthrough Prize Foundation, for supporting us. Today, Jan's going to talk about our project, the Agnostic Life Finder. So far, Breakthrough Discuss, we've been talking about, defining life and how it could be in different locations and, how we should kind of expand our horizons of ways of thinking about life. Then we were discussing the nature of consciousness and intelligence and obviously how it's so hard to define what that might be. But today we get to talk about, now that we've discussed what the extent of life could be in the universe, now how do we go develop instruments, develop missions, and go find that life? And voila, we are back in the town hall to hear about how to search alien worlds.
Zibby, please take it away.
Mission in the New Frontiers program at NASA. It's the fourth mission in this program. It's the same program with New Horizons that's explored Pluto, and Juno that's at Jupiter, and OSIRIS-REx that brought back the sample from Bennu.
Following a nice talk about Titan, we get to hear from Dr. Jan Spacek.
And in UV, we can see that Venus is actually quite very absorbing. We can see those dark streaks. So how I got here, why I'm talking about Venus now, that's because a breakthrough diverted me from research of Mars. I wanted to study life on Mars, and so I contacted Keith Klupar if a breakthrough would be interested in funding my research. And he said, ALFA is a very cool idea, I will talk about that later, but we are interested in Venus, so that's why I was working on Venus for a while. And so in 2021, this is a student I had for 2 months from the funding. So now to Mars. So unfortunately, I will not have time to get into details, which I really like. But the more we know about Mars, the more we are convinced that life can be on its surface. So you will have to trust the opinion of experts. Most people in 2019 on this conference were convinced that life on Mars is likely, since that we have many new results which show that it's very likely. And so people were calling for search for life on Mars for all the time, but they are usually not very heard, right? This was 2015, nearly 40 years since Viking. Are we ready for life detection? Answer was yes. Only thing that changed, now it's 50 years since Viking. And so when NASA tells us we've been looking for life on Mars, that's just for public. We need to do it very fast. So it sounds hard, but we already have a solution. I believe that with a $10 million investment, we can provide ready instruments to achieve all of this. So the solution we were proposing for a while now through Agnostic Life Finding Association is to make our instrument ALFA. It works. We have the second instrument in making. It's actually already made, and we will start testing it soon. And we are ready for that 2028 deadline. So far we are on a timeline if we get some funding. And this is called to all astrobiologists. We need all hands on deck, whoever can switch fields, work on Mars life. Now there's a little bit of personal responsibility because there's maybe a couple of hundred people in the world who can do this to help us find life on Mars.
Nice talk, Jan. There were a few more good talks in the session and a cool panel.
A twofold question. How can planetary science help us understand the context of potential life on exoplanets? And could exoplanets help us understand important things about our own solar system? So does anybody want to start?
Sure.
It would be a huge shock if you found life as we don't know it. How different from DNA could you really get before this whole sequencing project would fail? And what's the hope of finding something genuinely different through your sort of teleportation technique?
Well, the chemistry for sequencing is very dependent on the chemistry of RNA and DNA, so we could easily detect either of those if it's a different molecule.
Following the panel, we heard a talk from a Cambridge researcher who recently announced the discovery of a biosignature on K218b.
We
we were already saying that there was some tentative sign of this molecule DMS in this spectrum, and it wasn't inferred at very high significance at all. It was very, very tentative, less than 2 sigma for the most part. And the reason we were not able to infer that molecule robustly is because it is degenerate with other molecular features, especially methane here and CO2 here. It was buried under those features, so you couldn't see it clearly. So this is the first time we are ever seeing a mid-infrared spectrum. And then, now if you compare that spectrum with the molecular features that I showed you, we had explored about 20 molecules. Both several that were predicted, but also several that were not predicted. And what we are picking up is contribution of either DMS or DMBS in order to explain those wiggles. Okay? So that's our best interpretation right now. So the significance we come up with to explain these features with DMS and or DMBS is at about a 3 sigma level. Okay? Now, how do we get that? How robust are these data sets, right? So, we saw that these are the contributions in the nearly band, but the inference of these molecules depend heavily on how reliable is the data in the first place, right? We all want to ask that question: how robust is the data? Are you really seeing that wiggles, or are there other things you could be doing to the spectrum and that those wiggles may go away? Are there systematics that were unaccounted for? So, a 30-second anecdote is that usually for these kinds of data, these kinds of papers, our turnaround time is a few months. In this data set, we spent about 3 times that, 2 to 3 times that time, and most of that time went into trying to get rid of the signal. Okay? That was our first goal, is to get rid of the signal, not the interpretation. So we went through this long journey of using multiple pipelines built from scratch by 2 independent individuals, and when we plot all the spectra at the end of it doing completely blind analysis, they stack on top of each other. Okay, so that's one good test. But even within each of those reductions, there are various things you can do in your pipeline, all the way from data reduction to your from the raw pixel level data to your final spectrum. There are a lot of things you can do. And we basically checked every single of those assumptions and permutations, combinations you can do, and I just run through a few here. So for example, nonlinearity correction at the pixel level, if you use different means, you see that you still have the rough features sustained. Right?
After the talk, I was actually able to have a nice conversation with him.
I really sort of hope that in the next few years that, by the way, this is the 9th Discuss conference. This conference becomes kind of the forum where we begin to really understand the question of life in the universe and the nature of intelligence as we find it elsewhere. Again, thank you all for being here, and I'd like to add my thanks to the organizing committee.
So the conference has concluded. I am enjoying a little time off before the next little after party by walking through a nice little park in Oxford. It is a lovely time of year. The weather is really great. I mean, barely any clouds, which I can guarantee is quite a rare thing. Some flowers are blooming here by the rivers. And just contemplating some of the things that have been discussed here at Breakthrough Discuss 2025. Namely, the interesting observation potentially of DMS and DMDS at K218b, potential biosignature of, who knows, phytoplankton or something. And there's a goose right there. Maybe they make DMDS. Hello, goose. The initial observation of DMS at K218b was announced, I think, more than a year ago at this point. I remember talking about it at AbSciCon in May of 2024. But back then it was, I don't even know, maybe like 1.2 or 1.8 sigma, something like that wasn't super high. So of course the community demanded that there would be more data and better observations. So now that they have that, they have a 3.2 sigma potentially. Super fun discussion going on there, and looking forward to see how the community continues to react and evolve with this ongoing investigation at K218b. Personally, I actually think that this observation is pretty legit. I think that there's a decent chance that there is DMS and maybe even DMDS in the atmosphere of K218b. Now, whether that's life or not, and whether that's something that the community can agree on, that's something else entirely, and something that I think that the community is going to have to grapple with for many years. Overall, it's just been a really great couple days. Met a bunch of really fantastic people, great minds, and had interesting conversation. And I think that the discussions that were ongoing showed the validity of the Agnostic Life Finder project, and hopefully we'll be able to make some moves in the coming years. Really looking forward to seeing where we can take this project, and maybe even go find life on Mars. That would be pretty cool. And you're here to come along the journey with us, so thank you for that. Hi, puppy. Cute. Hi. Where's your owner? Hi. Hi. Cute. Hello. So just a quick summary of the couple days worth of events. The first day of the conference heard discussions on the nature of life, the possibility of life in different solvents and different environments. Then we're discussing the nature of consciousness and intelligence, and some people, namely on Spacek, think that this discussion may not be useful for the search for life in the universe because, well, after all, is it important to define life, or is it more important to go search for, as he said, interesting or maybe weird things? There's validity to both points, and we have no idea what we'll find, in the atmosphere of Venus or in the subsurface ice on Mars. And spending too much time talking about how we're going to talk about life can get in the way of how we're going to talk about how we're going to go find life, and can even more get in the way to in our efforts to actually go find life. Let's do less talking, I think, and more exploration. Now, of course, the caveat is resources. So hopefully with the new space paradigm and more interested private parties that are willing to invest their money for the good of humanity to conduct space exploration, let's hope that continues on the trend we've been seeing in the last few years. Anyways, yes, then today we were discussing less about the interesting but only intellectual conversation about what is life, and more about how are we going to actually go find it. So talking about exoplanets, talking about our solar system. Let's see, what else was there? I had a really fun conversation with Dr. Zibby Turtle, who is the PI for Dragonfly, and she's also the PI on the camera instrument for the Europa Clipper mission. So that was really fun picking her brain. Thank you so much for your insight. That was really valuable. And I was just blown away by how much this field and this community has evolved, even just in the time that I've been a part of it, which is not that long. So I'm super excited to see where we can take this, and full steam ahead, call to action, let's get going, all hands on deck. Everything in between. Life on Mars, let's go find it. Life on Venus could be there. Let's search for all the exoplanets we can. No, I don't know. JWST is amazing the way it can probe our universe, but at the same time, the sheer distances and the lack of data that we can really gather from exoplanets suggests to me, as a cynic, as a skeptic, that it's going to be extremely difficult to be certain that any detection of life on an exoplanet, whether it be by JWST now, the next 5 years, or maybe even with the next telescope, it might be difficult to really provide some unambiguous understanding of the conditions that we're seeing there through our observations, and it might be even more difficult to get the whole community to kind of understand that there's a consensus forming around that observation and that discovery. So, like I said, I'm a little bit of a skeptic, but I would love to be proven wrong. That's sort of my MO as it comes to astrobiology. So anyways, thanks again for tuning in, being a part of this journey. It's exhausting. Not sure if you can tell, but I am so tired. Barely stepped on the plane over here. Then the next morning we were getting going, and then we're out having fun. Still was kind of jet lagged, so I didn't get a lot of sleep, and then just the cycle repeats. So that's kind of why I'm out here in the park, just trying to get a little bit of downtime, a little bit of time to just let the mind relax. Thanks. What's funny is that I said I mean, I did. That's what I was doing. I was letting my mind relax. But at the same time, here I am recording, talking about, you know, JWST observations and DMS. It's like, that's how your mind relaxes, Chris? Yes, that is how my mind relaxes. Contemplating what I've just discovered and who I've just discussed with. Fun times. Anyways, see ya. To conclude the conference, we enjoyed socialization and libations. Alas, our time in Oxford was coming to an end. It was time for Jan and I to catch a train down south towards London town. While in London, we visited some astrobiologists at the University of College London and Birkbeck, and Jan gave a talk titled Hunting Aliens. Venus is interesting, Mars is urgent.
And so during those high mobility periods, very likely, the conditions are much more fertile, much more clement for life.
So where are we right now? We're just leaving Birkbeck, University College London, after Jan had just given his talk. How did that go, by the way?
Is that in Europe?
How did the talk go? What do you think? How do you think it went?
I don't remember any talk.
So that means it went well. Oh, but now we have to walk to our hotel. Actually, first we have to get a bus, but yeah, we're just at the tail end of our trip here, as you can see. Rounding out the trip, we did some sightseeing and relaxing. Hey guys, so we made it back to Gainesville. It's a really nice day. Let me show you some of the cool stuff the Breakthrough got me, because I was part of the science organizing committee, so they got me a little gift. So I'll start with these cool little postcards. This was, I actually don't know the name of this, but this little spire was like right out front of the, oh, it's right here. It says Martyrs Memorial, Oxford. This memorial was right outside the Randolph Hotel. This is really cool, so thank you guys for that. They got another one here. Let's see, there's that. I think this is the Ashmolean. Yeah, this is the Ashmolean Museum, which was right across the street from the Randolph Hotel. And that was where we had our reception. So good memories here, and I'm happy to have these. And then this was the hotel that we stayed at, the Randolph Hotel, and they had a little postcard in the room, so I took that as well. Okay, those are the postcards. And then in this little tote bag, which I'll show you at the end, Breakthrough also got me some University of Oxford English breakfast tea, super cute. And then on the back it says like a little blurb about like the history of Oxford. But I'm not a big tea drinker, but I'm definitely excited to use these to give myself some English tea, so that's good. And then of course, you know, you can't have English tea without a proper mug. So here they are. They got me a nice little, I think it said bone china mug or something like that. I don't really know what that actually means, but it's really nice. It has like a bunch of little symbols from around the town. There's the Bridge of the Sighs, I guess, the Bridge of the Sighs, yeah. And I saw that, and here's the, what is that called? Something camera? The Radcliffe camera, there we go. Saw that as well. Saw a bunch of these things in the town, but excited to go make myself some tea, and that says Oxford there too, so beautiful. Okay, and then last but not least, the actual tote bag that this all came in. Boom. This is like the theme for the event. It says, Life as We Don't Yet Know It. So, awesome, really cool. Like I said, really great experience, super fun to be a part of the, you know, this event and do some great networking and meeting some people, but also getting to, you know, tell them about the project that we're working on to, you know, try to develop the Agnostic Life Finder device and to go search for extant alien life. Bye.